For over 20 years, WWE has been the undisputed king of pro wrestling. They have the history, the money, and let's be real, they practically defined our childhoods with their brand of wrestling. But back in 2019, a paradigm shift took place in the wrestling world. For the first time in 20 years since the death of WCW, WWE had actual competition. Tony Khan's AEW burst onto the scene and had the entire wrestling world buzzing. Fast forward half a decade, and the wrestling fanbase is divided into two war zones. On one side, you have the WWE loyalists who keep bragging about WWE's legacy and profit numbers, and on the other side, you have the hardcore AEW fans who claim Tony Khan is a messiah who saved pro wrestling.
I love pro wrestling. I love doing this every week. Thank you for being here tonight.
But forget the Twitter wars for a second and let's actually settle this thing. Which promotion is actually better? Does WWE's massive machine still reign supreme, or has AEW managed to overtake WWE as the #1 destination for pro wrestling in 2025? Let's break down these two promotions based on 5 key factors and figure this out once and for all. When it comes to in-ring action, both companies have incredible talent. But here's the thing. One side lets their wrestlers actually wrestle, while the other keeps them on a tight leash to keep their sponsors happy. Now don't get me wrong, WWE has put on some absolute bangers this year. The triple threat between Rollins, Reigns, and Punk at WrestleMania was magic. Cena vs. Punk at Night of Champions took me back to their classics from 2011. The women's division, starring names like Rhea Ripley, Becky Lynch, and Charlotte Flair, got massive praise from fans and critics for their performance at Evolution. WWE clearly knows how to deliver when it matters. But when it comes to pure in-ring action, AEW gets the edge. The wrestlers there have creative freedom that WWE talent can only dream about. They're allowed to tell stories in the ring without someone in the back micromanaging every single move. Sure, AEW's style gets criticized sometimes for being too indie or too spot-heavy. Some people complain that it's all high-flying moves without enough psychology. But that criticism falls flat when you look at their big marquee matches. Hangman Page vs. Moxley told a story that had the entire arena invested. Toni Storm vs. Mariah May was a clinic in character work and in-ring storytelling. Omega vs. Okada reminded everyone why their New Japan classics are still studied to this day. And honestly, the list of classics just keeps growing every week with names like Will Ospreay, Swerve Strickland, MJF, and many more on the roster. The wrestlers in AEW aren't afraid to go all out because they know management has their backs.
He's a great boss. He's a great guy, and he's such a giving guy and forgiving guy.
They're not worried about getting heat backstage for going 5 minutes over their time limit. When Darby Allin throws himself off a ladder, he knows Tony Khan isn't going to bury him for it. Meanwhile, WWE wrestlers are constantly looking over their shoulders, wondering if this is the match that gets them in trouble with creative. That fear shows in the ring, and it kills the magic. WWE is so obsessed with commercial breaks and segment timing that the matches end up feeling rushed. But here's the catch. In-ring action alone can't carry a promotion if the stories behind those matches suck. You can have the greatest wrestlers in the world, but if fans don't care about why they're fighting, it's just some overhyped circus.
He became corrupted with all the power he gave himself. That's you, John Cena.
Storylines are the lifeblood of wrestling. Without them, you're just watching grown men in their underwear throwing fists and kicks. The greatest feuds of all time, Rock vs. Austin, Cena vs. Orton,
Attitude adjustment, wait a minute!
Michaels vs. Taker, Hogan vs. Savage, these didn't reach legendary status just because of the in-ring action or work rate. They defined eras because fans were emotionally invested in the stories being told. In 2025, storytelling has been pretty rough from both sides, and that's being generous. WWE came into this year riding high off 2023 and 2024's incredible Bloodline saga and Cody's championship run that had the entire wrestling world buzzing. But honestly, since then, the company has completely lost steam. The main story WWE's been pushing this year is John Cena's heel turn and his feud with Cody.
The John that I know, he wouldn't turn his back.
When Cena first turned on Cody, it was shocking. The wrestling world went nuts. But in classic WWE fashion, they ended up fumbling the follow-up. The initial buzz wore off fast, and now it just feels like they're just booking on the fly. The other big story has been Paul Heyman aligning with Seth Rollins and creating this power struggle between Rollins, Reigns, and CM Punk. Once again, this one actually started hot, but it's fallen apart due to some unfortunate injuries and weird booking decisions that make zero sense. Coming to AEW, their main story has been the Hangman Page redemption arc, which has been surprisingly nuanced. The way they've woven in Swerve Strickland's relationship with Hangman and Hangman finally getting his revenge against Moxley at All In was genuinely well done. The other standout feud from AEW has been the Toni Storm versus Mariah May saga. This was beautifully crafted storytelling that elevated both women. Storm's character work was next level, and May's betrayal actually meant something because they built the relationship properly first. AEW also deserves credit for smaller stories that actually make sense. Their mid-card feuds with guys like Christian Cage, MJF, Adam Copeland, Will Ospreay, and Swerve have logic behind them. Unlike some AEW feuds from 2024, people have genuine motivations that go beyond winning championships or proving who's the better wrestler. It's basic storytelling, but it works. So while both sides have been kinda disappointing in 2025, AEW gets the slight edge here. Their stories feel more organic, less corporate manufactured. WWE's stories often feel like they're written by committee trying to generate maximum revenue, which kills the authenticity. But here's the thing, storylines by themselves don't mean anything if they're not backed up by the right presentation and production. You can have the greatest story ever told, but if it looks cheap, nobody's going to care. That's where the real battle begins. When it comes to presentation, WWE clearly wins the battle, and it's not even close. AEW shows usually have this dark, dingy atmosphere that makes everything feel smaller than it actually is. The sound mixing is sometimes straight up amateurish, and the overall production gives off TNA 2005 vibes instead of a worldwide wrestling company. With Tony Khan having deep pockets, this should have been fixed a long time ago. But instead, we're stuck with cheap quality production that takes away from the in-ring action. WWE, on the other hand, has that polished big league look that just screams world class. It feels massive. Whether you're watching WrestleMania or a random episode of Raw, everything has this glossy, premium feel that makes you believe you're watching something important. Compare that to AEW shows like Dynamite and Collision that often look like they're being filmed in high school gyms with fancy lighting. WWE's presentation makes their wrestlers feel like superstars before they even step in the ring. AEW's presentation sometimes makes their best talent look indie level, which is a shame because they've got some world-class performers that deserve the spotlight. But here's the catch. Presentation can only be as good as the stars it's showcasing. If your roster lacks depth, not even the best presentation in the world can make up for it. Roster depth is one of the most crucial things for a wrestling company. You need stars at every level of the card, be it the main event, the mid-card, or the undercard, and not just a few big names carrying the entire show. While WWE doesn't have the same insane depth as the Ruthless Aggression era, when names like The Undertaker, Batista, Cena, Shawn Michaels, and Triple H were all on the same roster, but their current lineup is still pretty stacked. You've got established main eventers like Seth Rollins, Roman Reigns, and CM Punk who can headline any show. The women's division is absolutely loaded with Rhea Ripley, Becky Lynch, Charlotte Flair, and Alexa Bliss. Then there's the up-and-coming talent on all three brands like Braun Breaker, Trick Williams, Oba Femi, and Lyra Valkyria, who feel like future stars. AEW's roster, on the other hand, feels bloated as hell. Sure, they've got some legit stars like Kenny Omega, Will Ospreay, Adam Copeland, and Jon Moxley who can sell out arenas, but most of their roster can't even get booked consistently and just get thrown into random matches that don't mean anything. Here's AEW's biggest problem. They lack that one big mainstream name that casual fans immediately recognize. WWE has Cena, Rock still makes appearances, and even Roman Reigns has broken through to the mainstream. AEW's biggest stars are still pretty niche outside of hardcore wrestling circles. The women's division situation is even more telling. Sure, AEW has talented performers like Toni Storm, Mercedes, and Athena, but they completely lack the depth of WWE's women's division. More importantly, their booking is all over the place. One month, someone's getting a big push out of the blue. The next month, they're back wrestling on Collision or nowhere to be found. So when it comes to roster depth and star appeal, WWE takes the edge here. When your mom who doesn't even watch wrestling recognizes someone on the roster, that's star appeal. AEW's roster might be more work rate focused, but that doesn't move needles with casual audiences. When it comes to star power that translates outside wrestling bubbles, WWE wins easily. So far it's 2-2, but the final category will decide which promotion truly owns 2025. Moments are what get the wrestling world buzzing. These are the scenes that etch themselves into history.
It's Austin! It's Austin!
And stay burned in our memory forever. Daniel Bryan winning at WrestleMania 30, Hulk Hogan joining the NWO, The Undertaker's streak ending,
The streak is over!
Steve Austin shaking hands with Vince at WrestleMania 17, DX invading WCW, John Cena at ECW One Night Stand, Triple H breaking into Randy Orton's home, Kane setting people on fire, Seth Rollins betraying the Shield. These are the moments that define entire eras. They break the internet, they get the fans at work and school talking, they bring back old fans, they introduce pro wrestling to new fans, and they remind everyone why this art form is so special. Both promotions have delivered some memorable moments this year. Hangman winning the world title at All In and opening the briefcase to reveal the AEW world title was beautiful long-term storytelling paying off. The Omega and Okada showdown brought that New Japan epic feel to American TV. The emotional climax between Toni Storm and Mariah May had fans genuinely invested. But the biggest moment in pro wrestling in 2025 has without a doubt been John Cena's heel turn. The moment that broke the internet and had the entire wrestling world talking. When Cena turned at Elimination Chamber and low-blowed Cody, it was historic. Social media exploded. Casual fans who hadn't watched in years were suddenly paying attention again. It got mainstream sports shows talking about wrestling, and everyone had their eyes on the WWE. While the aftermath didn't quite live up to the initial hype, that moment itself will go down in wrestling history. Other key moments from both companies include Heyman's shocking betrayal of Reigns at WrestleMania, Naomi's surprise cash-in at Evolution, Adam Copeland's return to save Christian Cage, and the absolute carnage at AEW's Anarchy in the Arena. So while WWE might have the edge in this category with Cena's turn being the year's defining moment, there's a huge glaring problem here. While AEW is creating new stars and building moments for the future, WWE seems to be relying heavily on nostalgia and shock value to create buzz. Sure, it works for now. Cena turning after 20 years as a face was huge, but there comes a time when the well of surprise returns and veteran heel turns might run out of steam. What happens when there's no more nostalgia left to mine? What happens when stars like Cena, Orton, and Reigns are gone, and there are no major attractions on the card? What happens when the shock factor of heel turns gets saturated? AEW's moments feel more sustainable because they're building tomorrow's legends today, while WWE is still trying to piggyback off of yesterday's nostalgia with little to no plans for the future. But let me know what you think. Is All Elite Wrestling better than WWE in 2025? Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.